Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's been a long time, but welcome back to the Wasting Time podcast. I am your esteemed host, Chris the Nerd. Along for this ride, as always, my buddy Gray. How you doing?
Hello, I'm doing pretty good.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Now, we have spent a lot of time wasting our own time doing things other than the podcast. The last time we got together, we talked about Jurassic World, and we had said at the end of that episode that we were going to do a podcast on E3, which I think we tried to record a couple of times. We actually did manage to record it, and then we just never did anything with it because I think the time we finally finished talking about it, it was
It was kind of
past the
not
point of
relevant
relevance.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we can release it later as like a lost
That's a
episode.
lost episode, maybe. I think I still have the files around there somewhere. Luckily, our topic today is something that I would have thought initially there probably would have been some time constraints on, but the more and more I've thought about it, I thought that's not really the case because not a lot of people will watch as much fucking trash as we just have, so. Um, for those of you who have not read the title of the video, we are going to be talking about the spring 2015 season of anime and at least the stuff that we watched in any capacity. As more of a kind of like a quick episode to just kind of get our thoughts out there on these specific series that we actually put some time into. Uh,
Yeah.
I will say to start that both of us did not watch the stuff we're about to talk about. There's instances where only one of us saw the show in question, and a couple where both of us only saw a few episodes of it. So those topics are going to be a lot shorter, and as will be the discussions on some of the stuff that we both finished, mostly because some of these we might do full episodes on someday. So this is
Right.
more of like a quick guide, if you will.
Yeah, or like our first impressions on things that we only got a little
Yeah,
piece of.
exactly. So with that said, there are 11 different series that we're going to be talking about today. I put all 11 of them into a randomizer to get us the order of stuff we were going to talk about, just to keep things kind of moving along here. So without any further ado, let's talk about our first series. Now, the first series we're going to be taking a look at is called Punchline.
Uh, the,
And
the floor
yeah.
is all yours on this one because I didn't watch any of this.
Okay, and also I only watched 3 episodes of it. And there is a very distinct reason why I only watched 3 episodes of it, and it's that I only decided to give it a chance again recently. Um, there is something that you can contribute to this, and that is both of us had kind of the same thought when we read the synopsis for this series.
Well, yeah, like this is just like looking at the synopsis, it's like this is just a fan service show.
Mm,
Like one of those shows that's like uh has the conceit of being a comedy but is really just a bunch of like fan service strung together. That's what it looks like.
yeah, and after we just did that 2 hour long podcast on Kill la Kill, I was like, this is just gonna be the same shit where it's like, oh no, you don't understand, Chris, you're just a prude, and this is really satire, and I didn't wanna. As when I read the synopsis, which is essentially, and this is exactly how it reads. Even if you go to Crunchyroll and you read the synopsis, the little blurb that they have for the series, it's like, if this character, if Yuta sees panties, the world will explode. And I was like, that I was immediately just like, no, nope, it's just an excuse. And I had watched the first episode of it, and I was like, nope, it's was exactly what I thought. The first episode was basically loaded with just excuses for fan service, and I decided to. I pretty much called it quits right there. But later in the season, basically towards the end of the season, actually no, it was beyond that. It was actually more halfway through the summer season, which we're currently in. I decided to go back to it just to say that I gave it like a 3 episode chance because maybe there's something, you know, something there. We'll see.
Right.
And I just after having given it I'm kind of glad that I gave it another couple of episodes because having seen 3 episodes of Punchline, I can say that there's a lot, not a lot more, but there's more there that I might be intrigued to go back and watch at a later time. They added some elements that were more interesting than the dumb premise would have you believe. It's still loaded with all that fan service stuff. That's unavoidable, and it really goes out of its way to be as gratuitous as it can. So I'm not as excited to go back and watch it, but there is potential that I might go back and watch it. So I can't really ask you for your recommendation, but
Yeah.
based on what I've just said, do you have any interest?
Maybe, if there's more to it than
There's a
just
little
that
bit more.
original premise.
I want to stress that. There's a little bit
Okay.
more. There's a little bit more that they throw in with some supernatural elements and some time travel elements. And there are some decent comedy things that they throw in, but that's it.
Yeah, it might be worth a look, but not high priority,
Right. Same with
just
me.
based on that.
Yeah. So, like I said, these ones where we haven't seen as much, they're not going to be as long or as interesting of discussions. We understand that, and it sucks for this one especially because I'm the only one who watched it, and I only watched 3 episodes. But that's my recommendation based on 3 episodes is pretty much if you can put up with fan service stuff, then you'll probably get more out of it anyway. So if you don't mind that stuff, then just those little elements being introduced, I'd say yeah, go for it. But if you were kind of along the same lines that I was when it came to shows like Kill la Kill, then I'd recommend being a little more cautious.
Right.
Now, the next series we're going to talk about is one that we actually both have finished in a way. And
Yeah.
that would be Blockade Battlefront.
And this is one that we'll probably do a full episode on at some point, just
Yes.
because we liked it so much.
Yeah.
And also, there's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
And also, it's not technically done.
It's not
yet.
technically done, no. This is another kind of disappointing thing about using a randomizer, is that Blockade is the second thing we're going to talk about, because it was so up there, one of my favorites of the season, and probably one of my favorites I've seen in a long time. I love the shit out of Blockade Battlefront. For those of you who do not know, it wasn't supposed to be unfinished at this point in time. In fact, the finale of Blockade Battlefront was supposed to air over the 4th of July weekend. And for those of you who own a calendar, you know we are well past that. Essentially, at least as far as the information that I've looked up has said, the creators basically said that the 20-minute time slot was not enough for what they wanted to do, and based on everything that's introduced in the 11 episodes that do exist so far, there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be wrapped up, and I totally agree that 20 minutes is not enough time, and there's stuff that the show has added that's not in the manga, and all that needs to be wrapped up as well. So
Yeah, definitely. There's just so many characters that in order to give them all a big moment for the end, it would have to go over 20 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. But I am constantly checking the Blockade website and Anime News Network and anything I can to try and see when we're going to get there. But to this, as of this recording, whatever day today is, I don't have track of days anymore.
It's the 6th of
It is the 6th of September. I knew that all along. As of the 6th of September, it is still TBA. So right now we can only talk about obviously the 11 episodes that exist. But, I mean, we've been gushing about it already, so I think you can tell I absolutely loved what was here. I thought Blockade was great.
Oh yeah, it's got a great animation. It's got really fun characters that are all likable and interesting.
Yeah.
It's got great
phenomenal
music.
music. Yeah.
Yeah, like the not just like the opening and ending, which are like fantastic
Yeah.
on their own, but like even like the music during the episodes is really interesting and it really fits the like New York setting.
Yes.
Like
I really like that too. Yeah.
yeah, we for those who don't know, I guess we could go over the premise a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Basically, for those not in the know, Blood Blockade Battlefront is essentially there is an alternate dimension that has merged with New York City through this like big portal, um, and the instead of everything just being like, oh, now there's just monsters, like they've just kind of merged into a society together. And the main character, whose name is Leonardo Watch, is kind of mistakenly joins a like a not really government, like a private agency called Libra, which basically keeps all of this in check, since the creatures from the alternate dimension, they can have really disastrous powers. So Libra keeps everything in check and makes sure that this new New York City, which is called Hell Salem's Lot, stays safe. And all the members of Libra all have their own interesting powers as well. And our main character's powers, which is really cool, is the all-seeing eyes of the gods.
Right.
And they're really cool, especially like whenever like he's one of those characters who in his basic animations his eyes are always closed, but when he
Yeah.
opens them they're like really brilliant blue, and I really like the look of them too.
Yeah,
They're
he's
really
got
cool.
like the Brock thing going on.
Yeah.
The animation with it, like the way they animate his eyes, like the
Mm,
way they look, but also what he sees when he uses his powers looks really cool too.
yeah.
And it's kind of hard to explain. Everything looks like glowing and ethereal.
Yeah, I think ethereal is a good word for it. Um, it starts off kind of procedural. The first few episodes are very monster of the week, but once it reaches about episode, I want to say 4 or 5, they start introducing the overarching story that's brand new for the anime. For those who have read the manga, you actually have an interesting reason to check out the show,
Yeah,
because there's new stuff there, and it's actually really, really cool. I like it a lot. Um, and yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
definitely. One complaint I've heard from some people is that it throws you right in, and it can be pretty confusing at first because it's
Yes.
like running on its own rules, and it doesn't really slow down to explain everything. But
No.
if you really pay attention to what's going on and like everything that's going on, you do need to pay attention, but you will eventually understand it.
Yeah, I didn't really have a problem with that myself, and I watched the show before I started reading the manga. Obviously, the manga, since it's a manga, has a lot more time to dedicate to exposition and explanation. So that's certainly not the case in the manga. It does take some time to explain stuff, but now that you say that, it's absolutely true. The anime does kind of just play by its own rules, and then you figure this stuff out on your own. It kind of asks you to figure some stuff out, but not that that's extremely difficult. That
Nor do I think it's really like a bad thing that
No,
the
me
show
neither.
asks you to do that.
In fact, my only complaint about Blood Blockade Battlefront is it's not even really a complaint. It's more like the most minor of nitpicks ever, and it doesn't have anything to do with the sub, which is I watch the sub because I tend to watch a lot of stuff as it airs. Um, Unless there's some stuff that gets released that I have to go back to later, and if it has a dub, I'll go back and watch the dub. But for this, I watched it as it aired, and it had the sub at the time. But I did watch a couple episodes of the dub, and my only nitpick is that they don't have New York accents, which is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, that is really unfortunate because you watch something like Bakano
Oh,
or
yeah,
a lot of other things like set in that kind of setting, and they do the accents.
yeah, and that's and for those who don't know, which would probably be most of you, but that's Bakano is the standard that I hold English dubs to. Bakano and Steins Gate are the two. Those are the gold standard for which I hold English dubs, and
Oh yeah, the Bakano dub
Bakano
is
went out of its way to make all of these characters either have Chicago or New York accents. So it's funny hearing guys like Todd Habercorn do like a New York accent, but
Like some of
I
the accents aren't great in Baccano, but they all kind of work
yeah,
anyways.
but they all work, and it's that little detail that I really like. So
And it's missing in the dub of this.
yeah, and it was just, but again, that is the most minor of nitpicks. Everything else about the show is freaking great. I love it. I recommend it to everybody anywhere I go. I recommend it to people, especially at like conventions I've been going to. I recommend it to friends there, and I've gotten a couple people to watch it. So nothing makes me happier than having people start watching a good show that I've recommended to them and them liking it. So
Yeah,
um,
another thing, if I had one complaint about it, it's that the characters are so interesting, but they just don't have enough time in the amount of episodes that they have to
no,
go too in depth on everybody.
yeah,
Like, there's this really large cast, and pretty much everybody is interesting,
yes.
and not everybody gets as much time to shine.
That is true, but I still think it's telling of how good a job that they did. That even with what little amount of time they had, we still do like all of these interesting characters because even with the small amount of time, we want to see them more. So,
Right?
um, like I haven't researched how many volumes the manga is. I've only just started reading it, and I've read like the first two volumes maybe. So, I'm not sure how many volumes it is, but it is unfortunate that the anime was only granted 12 episodes.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a lot better had it been given like 20, or maybe there's another season in the works. I don't know. It's hard to tell, especially since the first season still isn't technically done. It has one episode left and has had
Yeah.
one episode left for 3 months now, so
Yeah, so
we
who
shall see.
knows?
We shall
Yeah.
see. But I think it's pretty safe to say that both of us give a roaring recommendation to Blockade Battlefront.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right, so the next series we're going to talk about is going to be along the same lines as Punchline, where we're not really going to have much to say, because I only watched 2 episodes of this. I don't even know if you watched any. And that would
Uh,
be the newest series from renowned mangaka Rumiko Takahashi, who, for those of you who don't know, is famous for series like Ranma Half and Inuyasha, and that would be Rin-ne.
yeah.
Did
I,
you
I
did you watch any of it?
I didn't watch any of it, but I can give some input because I heard you watching it while talking to you, and the voice of the main character does not fit his character's design whatsoever.
No, I kind of noticed that too. The defense that I can muster to that, for those of you who don't know, which is, I don't know why I always say that, but for those of you who don't know, the main character in Rin-ne, whose name is Rin-ne, Rokudo Rin-ne, he's going to, it's, kind of a Rumiko Takahashi trope of, this these kids in high school get into these weird situations, um, and all the female characters are Kagome. Um, but Rin-ne he's like a high school student, and his character design is like the average high school student uh, look. He is the most like outside of having red hair. He's just an average looking high school kid, but he's got the voice of like a 45-year-old man.
Another reason why it's so weird is like he looks a lot like Ranma,
Mm,
and so you almost
he
expect him to
does.
have like a Ranma voice,
Yes.
but then you hear that voice
Yeah,
instead.
and the voice he has is very, very, very deep. Like, usually when you watch those shows, when it's when you have like a high school boy as your main character, the pitch of their voice is usually like either high or medium. Usually, like even in English dubs, this will happen. Like you look at Bleach, you have Ichigo who is like what I would. He doesn't look like a high school person at all. Like they say he's 15, but that's a fucking lie. And he's voiced by Johnny Young Bosch, who has a good kind of medium pitched voice. Uh,
Right.
but in this, it would be like, I'm trying to think of it. It would be like having if you were to take the same thing, the voice of Rin-ne is like if you took Ichigo and had him be voiced by James Earl Jones. That's essentially what's going on.
Pretty much.
Because the voice, that was the only thing I really had to say about it too. Was that the voice is really off. That's, you know, the voice was really off, and you know what? It actually reminded me a lot of. The premise of the story is that he's like a Shinigami or he's a god in this who happens to be going to high school.
Speaking of Bleach,
like you do. It reminds me a lot of Bleach, but actually, another part of it, I don't know which one came first, and I don't care to look it up. It reminds me a lot of Noragami.
I think Noragami came first.
Where it's a god who's in like these high school settings, and they're both really into wearing tracksuits for whatever reason. And that's
in Noragami, they give a reason why, but I don't remember what the explanation is.
I think he's lazy. I've seen one episode of Noragami, but I'm probably going to watch more of it because I know there's another season coming out, and I've heard good things about Noragami, so...
Yeah.
But that's how interesting Rin-ne is. It allows us to talk about way more interesting series like Noragami and Bleach.
Yeah, I don't know. It's Rumiko Takahashi. I like quite a bit of her stuff, but I don't know. At this point, it's not her name alone isn't that much of a draw.
No, her name alone isn't. Her name alone was what got me to watch it in the first place, but the actual content so far hasn't really been interesting to the point where I was like, "Oh man, I got to keep watching this." I mean, I only watched 2 episodes. I barely remember anything that happened in it except for that really, really off voice of Rin-ne himself. So,
yeah.
I mean, again, I haven't seen enough of it where a recommendation is fair, but based off of the 2 episodes I saw and how forgettable they were, I don't know. It's still running through to this season. It'll be over in a couple of weeks. Those who have stuck with it, maybe you have a differing opinion. Maybe things get better after episode 2, but based off what I saw, it's not something I'm really roaring to go back to.
Maybe let us know in the comments.
Yeah, that's something you could do. Do that. All right, now we're this next one. This next one, I hate it. We're talking about Seraph of the End.
Oh my goodness, this is definitely gonna be a full episode later.
Yeah, this was one we'll be doing a full episode on, and for those of you who enjoy listening to people shit on stuff, make sure you tune in then.
When we're gonna talk about it, we're not just gonna be talking about the anime. We're gonna be talking about the manga too, because
for the purposes of this, it's I'll say this: it's hard not to talk. What we're about to do, we are only try our best to just keep it to the anime.
Right.
Gray and I also read the manga for Seraph of the End. I'm saying this just for disclosure. At first, you read what, the first 3 or so chapters?
Yeah.
Okay. You read the first 3 chapters, you told me it was terrible, and I believed you, but I wanted to see for myself. I read the first chapter, instantly hated it, and pretty much resigned myself to never go near it again. Then the announcement came that the spring season would have a season. It would have a season of Seraph of the End, and I decided, I was like, it was being animated by Studio Wit. For those of you who don't know, they do Attack on Titan, so at least we know the animation will be good.
Right. Supposedly.
And I figured, I don't know, maybe we'll see how deep this rabbit hole goes. And basically what has followed has been 30 plus chapters of just the most insane decrease in quality of something that was already such low quality to begin with. This manga is the musty colon of the manga world. It is an atrocity.
It's pretty bad. all
Uh,
the characters are so unlikable, and I guess we can go over
but
the
yeah,
basic
like that said,
premise.
but now to talk about the anime. The anime has only done. It only started with a 12 episode part one of a season. It makes a cutoff point in the story so far. I
I
don't
can't
know
believe
how they're
there.
gonna do it. It's next season. This coming season for the fall is when the next Seraph of the End part is gonna start again, and I don't know how they're gonna do it. They're probably gonna have to make up their own bullshit because the manga is moving as slow as fucking molasses.
Well, maybe whatever bullshit they come up with to wrap it up will be
Better
better.
than what's there. One
Hopefully.
we can only hope, but
But
but yeah, here's the premise of this fucking ass of a series. Seraph of the End is the story. It starts off with two young children named Yuichiro and Michaela, and they live a happy life as Dickensian street urchins can have, um, and then the world goes to shit. There's an apocalypse of sorts, and the world is taken over by vampires. A monster that has been just, has had a huge loogie hawked all over it by recent popular culture. And
especially this.
especially this. This certainly is not helping.
And then we're told in the first chapter in the first episode of
Hmm.
the anime that there's a sickness that wiped out all the adults on the surface of the earth.
Not just adults, anyone over the age of 13.
Right.
It said once you reached 13, that's it. You were done. Game
and
over.
that's if you look at synopses and like
Mm-hmm.
the basic premise for the show, like every place that you look, like the synopsis mentions that plot point.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, the sickness wiped out all the adults and older people, and so the
Yes.
kids had to live with these vampires who feed
Yes.
on them.
Yes.
And
And
that seems like an interesting premise.
that's a very interesting premise because that's almost like a story that writes itself because you've got a group of people in children who are, by society's norms considered weaker, and they have to survive against these monsters that are killing them left and right. It is the perfect survival story.
Yeah,
But then,
but
spoilers, it decides in the most bizarre, uh, just complete write off of an interesting plot point I've ever seen. They just said, "Nah, just kidding. It was a hoax." Like
yeah, the vampires
most of
were just
humanity
lying.
has been wiped out, but that disease thing that killed you when you reached 13, yeah, no, that was bullshit.
It happened, but they cured it so quickly that it doesn't actually affect the plot in any way.
Exactly. It was literally only there for the first episode. It is immediately clear. It's cured at the end of the episode.
Yeah. Well, later on you learn that like they say something like they're like, yeah, that sickness did exist, but we cured it like immediately once it popped up.
Oh yes, that's right. That's right. It was a later episode that said it was cured, but if you didn't know any better, you would be watching, and when you start watching, I think the main character is like 12, so he's close to that cutoff point, and he manages to escape this kind of quarantined, uh, whatever you would call it, this like township that he lives in that's walled off by the vampires. He
Yeah,
manages,
it's like underground.
yeah, he manages to escape, and then it does a time skip, and he's 17. It's like, well, what about that fucking 13-year-old thing? Like, why doesn't
Yeah.
that matter? Because then everybody else that you meet is like they're adults or they're around his age, around 16, 17 years old, and it's just completely baffling.
Yeah, it's so
Um,
weird. And it's funny that this was done by Studio Wit because a lot of the basic premises
It's Attack on
are
Titan.
yeah, it's basically just an Attack on Titan ripoff from that point.
Yeah, it's a
because
it's like a poor man's Attack on Titan.
because you, the main character, is like Eren in that his world gets turned upside down when
Mm-hmm.
he's young, by these monsters attacking his family.
His best friend's name is shortened to Mika.
Yeah. And from there on, he becomes obsessed with killing all the monsters.
Yeah, that's his
just like
driving
Eren.
force. Yeah.
And then he joins a military group that's got like kind of like a Levi figure
Yeah,
as the most prominent member.
and the voice actor in the Japanese dub for this Levi-like character, I swear to God, at least it sounds like it. I could be wrong. I haven't looked up to confirm this, but it sounds like Levi's got a pretty distinct voice in the Japanese dub, and it sounds just like him. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same voice actor. It is, and you know, just having similar, wasting a plot point, like wasting an interesting premise, being a ripoff of Attack on Titan. That's not all there is that makes this series terrible. It's really the just lackluster writing and horrible, like, underline horrible characters.
Yeah.
Everyone is terrible.
Every single character is so unlikable.
They're either unlikable because they're just dicks, or they're unlikable because they're stupid.
Yeah.
And not in, like, a character way, like, oh, this character is just kind of dumb, that's part of his character. No, they just do the dumbest shit. And it completely baffles me.
I feel like we could go on and on.
We could go on and on. We are going to do a full episode.
We should save it.
We are going to do a full episode on Seraph of the End, whatever that may be. I'm not sure when the manga is going to end. Hopefully soon.
Unfortunately, it's doing pretty well somehow.
I don't get it. I tell everybody, in any chance I get, that Seraph of the End is, like, literally the worst. It is so bad. I'm just trying to think of, like, specific things from the anime, like, that really ticked me off, but I keep going back to more recent shit in the manga.
Yeah,
that was terrible.
Because as bad as the series starts out, it somehow gets worse.
It gets worse as it goes. Like, the dumb shit these characters do. Like, the main character, he does a complete 180 in the course of an episode on his view of, and this is a trope you'll see in a lot of shonen series of, like, oh, friendship is the key all along and all that kind of shit. You see that a lot in shonen series. I'm kind of numb to that story element at this point. You know,
it's just like the occupational hazard.
It just comes with the territory. If you're going to see a shonen series, most likely friendship is going to be brought up in some way, shape, or form. There's just no way around it, you know. And it can be good if done in a good way. Like, I think Hunter x Hunter did a great job with that. But again, to avoid going off on One Piece does a phenomenal job with that. But to avoid going off on any more tangents with Seraph as it comes to Seraph of the End, his viewpoint on that is that he doesn't need them. Like, his driving force is, I want to kill all the monsters, and that's it. So the Levi figure, who in a very un-Levi way of doing things, basically orders him to make friends. He, like, suspends him from...
You can't move upwards in the ranks unless you
make friends, because, you know... That's how. And
it's not even done like in like a kind of like subtle way.
No, that's exactly what he says.
You need to. It's not like you need to learn to work with people and have teamwork. It's literally you need to make friends.
Like, I'm not. Yeah, we're not shitting you. The actual line of dialogue is, you cannot go out and fight these vampires until you make friends.
It's so stupid.
It is so terrible, and he eventually makes a friend.
Kind of.
This fucking ditzy kid who looks just like him. Could be his fucking twin. Again, if you read the manga where it's all in black and white, the only way you can tell them apart is one of them occasionally wears a hat.
And one of them's always smiling and the other one's always frowning.
Yeah, right. But anyway, after he makes his pseudo friend, all of a sudden, everybody's his friend now. Everybody's his family, and he loves his family, and it's completely 180 degrees terrible, 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 and I can't wait until it starts again in a couple of weeks.
So you can make fun of it more.
So I can make fun of it some more. I can make fun of, and some of you might be thinking, well, that's awfully stupid of you, Chris. Why are you going to watch it if you hate it so much? Well, because they're getting to the really, really shit part of the manga now in their upcoming season, and I can't fucking wait to see how awful it's going to be. It's a goddamn shame that we have to wait until summer of next year to get Attack on Titan's second season, because Studio Wit is busy working on this shit.
Although I am thankful that it's giving the Attack on Titan manga more time to give them more material, because it's getting into... This is a total tangent, but the Attack on Titan manga is getting into some really interesting territory right now.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is, and I'm grateful for that fact too, but fuck Seraph of the End.
Although we get new chapters of Seraph of the End at the same rate, so you could kind of compare and contrast between Attack on Titan and Seraph of the End.
They are both monthly series. So I think it's fair to say that our recommendation is to not
watch it, because it's so terrible.
Yeah, that's really it. It's, believe it or not, it's no, don't stay away. Watch it so that you can see how terrible it is, and that you can lambast it too. But if it ever comes time to give a critique of it, make sure you say that it's shit.
Oh, there is one particular thing special to the anime that's not in the manga.
Oh.
When Yoichi becomes his friend in like the first episode or the second episode or whatever.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And he like glomps onto him.
Yeah.
For some reason in the anime, they took that opportunity to animate him like humping you while he's like glomped onto him.
Yeah, that is a bit weird. Yes, in the manga, there's like Yoichi, who is the character who occasionally wears a hat. When he pseudo becomes Yuichiro's friend, he like kind of trips and like falls into him and knocks him over. And in the manga, it just kind of stops there. But in the anime, they have the same thing, where he, like a total fucking ditz, falls over, and he falls onto Yuichiro, and like is struggling to stand back up. And the way it's animated, it looks like he's just dry humping him. And it's really fucking awkward. And because everybody else is laughing... They're like, he's finally made a friend. It's like that kind of thing, like when you go over to one of your friend's house and their dog humps your leg, and it's just like, oh, I guess he likes you.
Yeah, hey, look, you made a friend.
Exactly. So yeah, that's Seraph of the End. It sucks. All right, so our next...
Stay tuned to see the full episode on that eventually.
Yeah, that'll, again, hopefully sooner rather than later, because, I mean, the writer, he isn't very good to start, but it doesn't look like he has any plan. There's nothing that really seems like it's being set up for anything down the road, so part of me is just hoping that he's winding down, and that it's all gonna end soon.
Yeah.
That would be one of those series that would be great if just like a meteor strikes and kills everybody, and it's just like, that's the end of the series, ladies and gentlemen. It's like, the moon crashing into Terminus. Like, that would be great. Just have that happen, but nobody plays the Song of Time to rewind it.
Yeah, there's no link to save everybody.
Exactly. That would be phenomenal. Or like if all the characters I hate die.
Like the disease comes back and they can't cure it this time.
They can't cure it this time, and it kills off all the terrible ones. There's only 2 survivors, and it's Farrad Bathory and Crowley Busford. I'll let you in on a little joke. The only reason I like Farrad and Crowley is because when I was reading the manga, I would read it out loud, and when I would do the voice of Farrad, he would be Pegasus. More specifically, Little Karibo's version of Pegasus, and all lines of dialogue said by Crowley would be to the tune of Mr. Crowley by Ozzy Osbourne. In reality, both of those characters suck too, so...
But Farrad Bathory has his own baked bean company.
He does. He has a conglomerate of baked beans. They don't explicitly say that, but there is for some reason, just a can of baked beans, and it says Bathory's Baked Beans. And that's amazing.
But we should probably be moving on.
Fuck Seraph.
Yeah.
Alright, the next series we're going to talk about, when we first were planning this episode out, I wasn't going to have anything to say about it, but there is a little bit that I'll be able to contribute, and that is the disappearance of Nagato Yuki. I'll let you start with the floor, because you have actually watched some of it.
Yeah, I haven't seen very much. Again, I gave it like the 3 episode thing, and I haven't had more time to go back and watch more.
Right.
But what I've seen so far, I do really like. It's basically a continuation of the disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, which was the movie based on the franchise of The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. It takes place in an alternate timeline where in the original, Nagato Yuki is like a robot, but in this one, because Haruhi never came to their school, everybody that was something supernatural in the original is just like a regular person now. And if you like the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, if you like that series, it's got a lot of the same stuff. I was really worried at first because one of the central appeals of the original is like Keon's narration for everything and his reactions to stuff. But because it's Yuki as the main character this time, I was worried that the focus would be taken away from that. But you do still get some of his reactions to things, and like you occasionally like get some of his inner narration, and it's pretty good. There's a cute little love story going on between Yuki and Keon, like this timeline's Keon. It's really funny. A lot of the characters are recontextualized in interesting ways. And it does look like, even though it takes place in a timeline where Haruhi's not as big a part of it, she does show up, and it does seem like weird stuff, like the kind of intriguing, weird, supernatural stuff from the original is going to come back and play a part in it later on, from what I've seen.
Okay. All right, and the little that I can contribute to this is, it's really not even much of a contribution. I have not seen any of Nagato Yuki, but I recently watched The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, and I liked it quite a bit, so that was... I was mainly using that as my kind of barometer to see whether or not I would watch Nagato Yuki, because obviously as it was airing, I hadn't seen either Haruhi Suzumiya, the Melancholy, or Disappearance. I still haven't seen the Disappearance yet, but I have seen all of, at least all of season 1 of the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, and based on the recommendations of multiple people, it seems that it's okay to just skip season 2, and so I will. But yeah. I will be going to watch, going on to watch Nagato Yuki, because I do like the characters in The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. I'm interested to see what they do for Nagato Yuki, and you watched, 3 episodes?
Yeah, and like I said, if you like the characters and you like the sense of humor in the original, you will probably like this.
That I do, so that is definitely one that I will be checking out. I wasn't able to start it before we could record this podcast. I probably will watch The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya before I watch Nagato Yuki, but yeah, it's I can't really give a recommendation, but it sounds like it's something that you would recommend, so
yeah.
There you go.
From what I've seen, like I said, I haven't seen all of it yet.
Right. So now we're moving on to our next series now, which is one that we've both seen only a couple of episodes for. But based on those couple of episodes, I can say that I really like this series, and it's the Heroic Legend of Arslan.
Yeah. I saw 3 episodes. I don't know how many episodes you saw.
I also saw 3. We saw the same amount. I really, really liked it. I was just... with the job I have, I'm constantly being shipped all over fucking creation for work. So I'm in hotels a lot, and I work a lot, so I haven't had the time to dedicate to stuff that, I haven't already made commitments to watch. So I haven't had the time I would like to go back and watch Arslan. But yeah. It is definitely one I intend to watch, especially with the announcement of a Dynasty Warriors-like game coming out for Arslan. So
Mm-hmm.
That's all it took for me.
Yeah, the basic premise is that Arslan is this prince of this kingdom. In the first episode, they repel this enemy nation in this big battle,
Mm-hmm.
and later on, it skips ahead of a few years, and the kingdom's very confident that because they were able to repel this enemy before,
Mm-hmm.
that they'll be able to do it again.
Yeah.
But they end up basically falling right into an ambush and a trap,
Yeah.
and the king is killed, and Arslan is left as the sole survivor.
There was also a betrayal. It wasn't just a trap set by that enemy. They also had a traitor in their midst.
Right.
But and it's about him from there. Basically, that third episode ends with it being revealed to Arslan that he's, basically he's got a couple people that are going to help him, but he's essentially by himself, and he's kind of shown as like a not a full wimp, but basically kind of everybody else kind of views him as a wimp, kind of weakling character.
Yeah, he's. There's a part where they ask, like, do you think Arslan's more like his father or like his mother? And they say that he's more like his mother because he's gentle and kind and not much of a fighter.
Exactly. So right there, it's there's you can tell right away that the series is eventually going to ask him to step out of his comfort zone and make some difficult decisions, and it's probably going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what does happen. That's another one that is still running. It's got a couple weeks left of its run, and it's definitely something I want to go back and watch all of, because I really liked what I saw. I liked the characters that were introduced. So
yeah, and the battle scenes are really amazing. Just
yeah,
like these huge battles going on.
The scope of the series is pretty incredible. So
there's some interesting political stuff too. Because,
yeah.
In the first episode, after that initial battle, they have like some prisoners of war from the other nation,
Mm-hmm.
and they bring up this interesting point of like Arslan's country keeps slaves. And Arslan at first doesn't understand that that's like a bad thing. He's like, oh, we treat our slaves really well, and like we give them everything that they would ever need. But later on, he does end up seeing like some like cruelty towards them,
Mm-hmm.
and he ends up being held prisoner by one of the like a young like kid who was one of the prisoners of war,
Mm-hmm.
and the kid uses Arslan as a hostage to escape from the city.
Yes.
But while they're together, they have this little conversation about like the fact that Arslan's country keeps slaves, and the kid's country actually like they have like this kind of like hypocritical almost belief that everybody is born equal under their god, but if they don't like believe in their god, they're like heathens that must be killed.
Yeah.
So it's like this interesting thing. A lot of like odd, interesting little political themes going on.
Yeah. And like I said, it's really interesting to see how it'll all come together. And that was just in the first, 2-3 episodes. So
Yeah, like all this interesting stuff being brought up, and just within the like very beginnings of this.
right. So again, I think it's safe to say that based on what little we've seen, we both like it, and I would say worth a recommendation.
Yeah.
All right, so we're moving right along. We're at number 7 on our list, and you're about to hear a can open. So let me just get that. There we go. Tonight's episode brought to you by Mountain Dew Throwback. Real sugar, real good. Mountain Dew Throwback.
Oh, I wish if we were sponsored, we'd be getting money for this.
Yeah, we're not actually sponsored by Mountain Dew Throwback. I just happen to be drinking it. But Mountain Dew, if you'd like to cut me a check for that little plug of your throwback soda.
I think Crunchyroll should sponsor
Yeah.
us too, because we watch so much of this stuff on Crunchyroll.
Yep,
Come on, guys.
a lot of this is, Crunchyroll, Funimation, Mountain Dew. If you're listening, please, throw a little money our way, huh? That said, our next show was airing on Crunchyroll, and it's we're just gonna shorten the name to Dungeon. Is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon?
Or we could shorten it to Don Machi, like a couple of weebs.
No, we're gonna call it Dungeon. Because we're not a couple of silly weebs. Even though we totally are. Anyway, Dungeon. It's freaking great.
Yeah, this is another series that was one of my favorites of the season.
Yeah, same here. I wanna say right off the bat, the quality of Dungeon was actually, even though the other series has absolutely nothing to do with it, the quality of Dungeon is why I went back and watched Punchline again,
Because they're both kind of like fan servicey premises.
Because well, really, if you get down to the nitty gritty of Dungeon, it's not. Like, you would think it is, because when I first read the premise for Dungeon, I was like, oh boy, there's two of them in one season, you know, or you have Punchline, which is about a, guy, who looks at panties all day, and then you're gonna have Dungeon, which is I bet you it's gonna be a harem.
And it kind of is, but it does a lot more than that.
But it does so much more than that part of it becomes almost like an afterthought.
Yeah, basically the premise is it's this really interesting like RPG inspired world where the gods have descended from the heavens. They're not able to, well, they're not allowed to use their powers themselves, but they can bestow power onto mortals. And so they create these groups called familias of the mortals that the gods have empowered, and they each all the familia members worship that god, and usually they make money by going into this dungeon, which is basically treated like an RPG dungeon.
Yeah.
They become adventurers. They go in the dungeon. They look for loot. They kill monsters. They level up.
Yep.
And it's all through the power of these gods.
Yes.
That they're able to do it. And basically the way that the harem aspect of it comes into it is our main character Belle Crenell is a pretty like brand spanking new to adventuring guy going into the dungeon for pretty much like one of his first times going in there. He gets attacked by a monster that's somehow wandered onto the wrong floor, and he gets saved by this girl. And a girl named
Eyes Wallenstein.
Eyes Wallenstein. I remember it being weird. Some weird names in this, but she saves him, and he falls in love with her like immediately, like kind of like in an infatuated kind of way.
Yeah, like a love at first sight kind of thing.
But he feels like so inferior because he had to be saved by this girl that he wants to get stronger, and that his love for her and his desire to get stronger actually gives him a new ability that allows him to become much stronger much more quickly than others, simply as long as those feelings remain. And from that premise, you might think that like, oh, this sounds like really weird. It's kind of like a harem thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a damsel in not damsel in distress, but kind of like he's doing all this to get the girl at the end.
Yeah.
It's not really like that.
No.
Like there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, there's a lot more to Belle's character, to Eyes' character, and all the other characters who get introduced later. There actually is a very large cast of characters in this, and they're all interesting, and no one character's motivation is that. Like there's all like they might have that element to them where one thing that they are doing is to get with somebody, but there is so much more to all of these characters, and I was really pleasantly surprised that that ended up being the case, because another thing about this series is it's done by JC Staff, and they're a company that's kind of almost known for doing a lot of fan servicey kind of stuff, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. But they're known for that, so when I was watching this, I was like, oh no. But then as it went on and they started to develop this world and develop all of these characters, I found myself getting really immersed in it. And I really liked the main character. I thought he was a great hero, and like it has a lot of really, really awesome moments in it.
Yeah, there's great action scenes. Like I love the action scenes in this. Like they're really well animated.
Yeah.
And they take these little RPG touches, like the monsters like disintegrate when they're killed.
Yeah.
And there's like a lot of really great like audio design here too. Like
Oh
there's
yeah.
really like crunchy, like bassy sound effects to everything when they're
Yeah.
fighting.
Yeah, everything sounds great, and like, oh, it does such a good, like, again, like, there's always the debate about, watching something in Japanese versus English, and there is no English dub of Dungeon, and I doubt there will be one, but I gotta say, whoever it is that they did to pick whoever was the voice of Bell, he really sells getting the shit beat out of him, because the show does a really good job of making you feel for this guy, like, because in a lot of those kind of like harem-esque shows, like,
Oh, the leads are always like the blandest
yeah,
characters.
they're always like really bland, and they're like both in look and in the way they act. They don't really have anything interesting about them. They're just regular looking people. But Bell's character design, he's already kind of like an exotic looking person because he's got white hair, he's got red eyes. But there's a lot to his character. He doesn't just have some bland personality. He's he's got character. He's got traits. He's got different motivations. There's interesting
and
things
he changes
about him.
and he grows. Like
Yeah.
that's a big part of the series is that these characters grow over time.
Yeah, and like it makes you feel for, like, when he's getting the tar beat out of him. You're like there's actual tension there. There's stakes in these action scenes because even though he's got this ability, like when you think, oh, now he's just got this I win button ability, which is I can level up faster than anybody else, so I'm just gonna be fucking unstoppable. And he gets this equipment that makes you think he's gonna be unstoppable, but he's not. Like, he still, even as he grows more powerful, the obstacles become also, like, they grow with him. So like he's like it always
RPG.
feels like he's being challenged, exactly like an RPG. And it does such a good job of, even when it gets to like these later parts when he's leveled up so much and he's got all these cool abilities, like there's still tension in the fight scenes.
There's some really cool like powers and stuff in this too. Like most characters that are adventurers in the dungeon, they have at least one unique ability, and they're all pretty cool.
Yeah. And like even Bell himself, like when he gets like, and to anybody who's been playing video games for a long time, one of the coolest abilities that he gets, it's one of the best moments in the series, is when he uses he just uses a firebolt. And it's like one of the coolest moments in the series. He's fighting this giant monster, and he just, at the top of his lungs, he shouts "Firebolt!" And it's so cool. It's such a great moment, and
like the final battle in this series,
Yeah.
like in this season, is so
Great.
cool.
Yeah.
And there's so many characters involved, and they like all get
Yeah.
like something.
And this will definitely be one. I don't know when, but I think it's fair to say that we'll probably do a full episode of the Wasting Time podcast on Dungeon, because it is worth talking about. I really, really, really hope that it gets like a second season. I've heard that the author of the original light novels that it's based off of is currently working on a new one. He's writing another novel in the series, so I think the potential is there. There's still a lot of stuff that can be done with all of these characters, and there's quite a few of them. It's such a great world. It'd be a shame to see nothing else come of it.
Definitely, and like there's more light novels that they could adapt.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that, for the purposes of this podcast, it gets a full-on recommendation from me, no questions asked.
Me too. I'm definitely hoping this gets a second season.
Same here. Now we're moving on to one that I don't know how much of it you've seen. It's still running. I've watched all of it. I am completely caught up with it. It is Ninja Slayer from Animation.
I watched 2 episodes.
You watched 2 episodes, okay. Now, the interesting thing about Ninja Slayer is that each episode's about 12 minutes long, and it's from Trigger. And we just did a very long podcast on the last thing that Trigger did, and, there's, I just don't think they have any money.
Yeah.
In spite of having this successful series, because like, even though you and I thought, like, I didn't think Kill la Kill was awful. I just thought it was, a waste of potential. It could have been a lot better.
Yeah, I didn't hate it either.
I didn't completely hate it. I just didn't like it to the weird degree that a lot of other people do.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
But that series was by no means unsuccessful. They had to have made a shitload of money off of that series. Like,
Yeah,
I see nudist beach merch everywhere when I go to conventions, so there's no way they're not making money.
But one of the things about this, and the reason why it's shorter than a lot of things, is because it's actually a web animation that's published online, so it's not something that they poured their main resources into.
That's a good point.
That being said,
Yeah.
it's pretty. Even for this kind of thing, it's pretty subpar even for that.
Yeah.
Just in terms of animation.
Just in terms of the animation. Now, I already know the argument to anyone else who has seen Ninja Slayer. The joke is obvious. I get it. That this lack of animation is used as a joke. And in some case, like in the first episode, I got a kick out of it. I'm not gonna lie. I got a kick out of it in the first episode, where it's like, oh, haha, it's minimal, it's like taking minimalist to a whole new level, ha 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 ha. But it got old quick.
One of the things that they do really often for every major action scene is they'll show a side view of a little clip art.
Yeah, it's like a cardboard cutout almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and they just kind of move these cardboard cutout pieces around the screen to convey the action that's going on. It looks really bad.
Yeah, it looks like that's not to say that there's they do get some decent jokes out of it. Like whenever he'll throw a shuriken at somebody and it'll hit them, and then there'll be almost this different animation blood splatter will happen, and it's just like a fire hose, and there's there's some decent visual gags like that, but most when you only got a 12-minute episode and most of it is spent doing this, there's a ton of that cardboard cutout animation where they'll just show a flat picture moving across the screen, and then but it'll be most of the episode will be that, but then when they get to there are scenes where they have actual animation that they do, but even that animation doesn't look great.
If it was all animation like those parts, though, I think it would actually be better.
I think so too, because at least it would be consistent. If it was consistently a cardboard cutout thing like that, because it's 12 minutes long, since it's so short, I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. But since there are those times where they use regular animation, and a lot of those times they'll use that regular animation, it'll be a 4 or 5 second clip, and then they'll cut it and then paste it and paste it again. And there's times where it gets really, really annoying. There's this one fight that the main character, whose name is Ninja Slayer, has with another guy, and he's just repeatedly punching him in the face. So he'll do the punch, and the guy's head will careen back in a whoa kind of way, and it'll play the audio clip will be that guy who gets hit, and he goes, "Whoa!"
They reuse audio a lot.
And that's exactly what I was about to say. There was that scene of Ninja Slayer punching this guy in the face. They do it 6 times, and it's the exact same animation, same angle. Nothing about it changes. It's just punch, 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 and it's annoying. When it's done so many times, apparently they've never heard of the rule of threes.
Yeah, it's really the same thing as Kill la Kill, where it's having really limited animation is not a bad thing, but you need to make it actually
right. No.
Good.
There's nothing wrong with having limited animation. I understand budgetary constraints, and we said this in our podcast about Kill la Kill when we were talking about the limited animation. And yes, sometimes you can use that for a visual gag, and Kill la Kill did that actually way better than Ninja Slayer did, because that's all Ninja Slayer has. I can safely say, having watched all of Ninja Slayer, it has some funny moments, but it wouldn't be something that I would really recommend fully. It's really average. There's some decent visual gags sometimes, that's, like, the story is really nothing to write home about, because
Yeah.
it's 20, it's going to be 26 episodes, I think, long, and it's just been completely, it's repetitive.
Mm.
you know
Well, from the couple episodes that I saw, I actually like if the animation wasn't so distracting, I think I'd actually really like it
well, I
because
did too at first.
there are those like this sense of humor. Like if the animation was better, it would be really good. Like this over the top gore
Yeah.
and like how the ninjas always have to be so like polite to each other
Yes.
because that's their code.
Right.
Like they always call each other san,
Yeah.
and they
They
always
always bow. They always
they
introduce
always
themselves.
introduce themselves by name. They say sayonara when they kill each other.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. That's funny.
Yeah.
Like the over the top violence is funny. I
Yes.
actually really like the character designs themselves.
I agree. Yep, that I agree
But
with.
but
Yep.
but just the animation's so distracting that when I like feel like I want to try to watch it, I just can't bring myself to do it.
Right. I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I also like the character designs. I think there are some decent visual gags here, and there's a pretty good sense of humor. And when you watch, like, the first, I would say 5 or 6 episodes, you're like, oh, this, the animation is unfortunate, but you can kind of look past it a little bit to, to kind of enjoy the comedy that they're doing, because I mean, the story is, it's about a guy who he kills ninjas, and he, just keeps climbing up the ladder and killing more and more, powerful ninjas. But at this point, when it's at like episode 20, whatever, 22, it's just doing the same old things over and over. It's gotten into like some Kill la Kill esque, just gratuitous fan service, and it's doing the same things. It's like it had a few jokes under its belt that it's like, these are funny. We've got these 4 jokes and they're really funny. And they put them out in their first episode, and it's like, oh, that's kind of funny. I like that. And then they did it again
Yeah.
in their like second, third, fourth, and fifth episode. Just like, okay, I get it. It's still kind of funny, so whatever. And then here we are now at episode 20 and 21, and they're still doing the same things. It's like, okay, do you have anything else for me? Like, the only thing I'm going for now is to see the kind of ludicrous character designs you guys can come up with. And that's about
Right.
all there is left. So.
Yeah, that's too bad.
It is too bad. It was one of the more unfortunate disappointments of the season. The only reason I'm still watching it is because there'd be no point in not finishing it. I'm already 20 episodes in. There's only going to be 25 or 26 episodes, so
Yeah,
might
they're
as well just
short episodes.
yeah,
so.
they're 12 minutes long. Might as well stick it out to the end. I haven't watched the one that I think it was released yesterday, a couple days ago. I haven't watched the newest one, but it's almost done, so that's really the only reason I'm still sticking it out. Speaking of disappointments, the next series we're going to talk about is one you only watched a couple episodes of, and I turned on so hard, and it is Plastic Memories.
The 3 episodes that I watched were enough to get a idea of what the entire series is, pretty much.
Yes. For a little bit of backstory on this one, nothing irks me more than when I read a synopsis about something and then it bait and switches me. I hate that so much. Now, when I read the synopsis for Plastic Memories, I really was intrigued by the premise of it. I'm really into like science fiction stories, and android stories I think are really cool. Like one of my favorite movies of this year was Ex Machina. I really love
Oh, yeah.
stories about androids. So
That's a great movie. Go see it if you haven't.
yes, that's the conclusion on Plastic Memories. Go see Ex Machina. Anyway, and the premise of Plastic Memories is that, and it's kind of ridiculous when you really start to think about it. There is a company, and they have created this android, and they're called Giftias, and the main character works at a company. He works at this company that has created these androids, but the department he works for is called the Retrieval Department, and what they do is basically, in the world's dumbest design flaw, after about 9 years, of owning a Giftia, that's when they're like their circuitry and their all their inner workings, they start to go a little crazy, and they basically shut down in a way. What happens to them is they become like like complete raging psychos, which again is a horrendous design flaw. But it basically what it is when you buy a Giftia, it can be whatever you want. Like if you're a person who's, if you've lost somebody close to you, you can have a reasonable facsimile of that person. Or if you just want a companion, that's basically, you can have one of these realistic androids. They are, about as close to human as humanly possible. And,
Mm-hmm.
But that's the drawback, is after 9 years they will turn into these like crazy monsters and will go nuts, and that's why they have this retrieval department. They basically, when somebody's Giftia is close to that point, they will go to the person and essentially convince the owner to part with this person that they've had with them for 9 years, to be retrieved, to basically shut them down.
Right.
And now, at hearing that premise, I was really interested in that, because, like I said, I really love android stories. I thought that sounded really interesting, and I thought it was going to do a great job at being an emotional series. Like, there was going to be some really great emotional stuff they were going to do. And we've had a lot of series like that in the last couple of years that have been really, really good. Something like Your Lie in April, which I haven't seen, but I've heard a lot of people talk about that and say it's really good. Or one that I actually have seen is Anohana. Those are different kinds of stories, but they're ones that take an emotional story and do it well. Like you've got a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. It's like, going to be an emotional series, and it does really well with that.
And there's so much you could do with this premise, like in that vein, because it's like exploring different kinds of relationships that people have with these Giftias, dealing with like the loss and like the feelings of grief, and just the different ways that people handle the situation. And for the first couple of episodes, it almost seems like they're going to do that. When I said that 3 episodes was enough to understand the entire series, that's kind of what I meant, because in the first episode, you have this great story of like this little girl, Giftia, is being taken away from this older woman, and she's like, I can't have children, I don't have anybody, this is the only person left in my life, don't take her away.
Yeah.
But they finally, eventually do come to an understanding and are able to take her away, and it's really sad, and it's really like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That's the first episode.
And and that's one of those things where you look at the main character and it's like, he's just like some kid, like he was, given this job that he didn't set out to have this job, and now he's got like one of the most like, emotional jobs in the world. It's kind of like there was a movie, I can't remember the name of it right now. It had Woody Harrelson in it, and it was about he worked for the military, and he was the guy who had to go around door to door and tell people that their loved one, who was also serving in the military, has died, and that's his job. And I was like, I thought it was going to be something like that, like, this guy who doesn't really want this job has to be the bearer of the worst news that these people are going to get. And I thought they were going to do something really, really interesting with that. And if somebody can tell me what that movie is, I'll look it up later. But oh no, right. As of right now, I don't know what movie that is.
And then in the second episode, they do kind of an interesting thing. It's more about the main character learning more about his partner, Giftia.
Yes.
Because all the members of this group are partnered with a Giftia who helps them.
Everybody in the department has their own partner Giftia.
Or rather, the humans are there to help the Giftias, rather. But the second episode is him learning more about his partner and like her limits, because she hasn't been on the workforce for like quite a while.
Right.
And she has a lot of quirks to her that make it kind of hard to work with her. So he's learning to work with her, and basically there's still some of the retrieval stuff, because there's a person and their Giftia try to like run away from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do get a little bit of that. It's not as emotional as the first episode.
But yeah, no.
It's understandable because it's focusing more on the characters.
Right.
And then in the third episode,
It takes a complete nosedive.
yeah, and then the third episode is just this nothing happens, like comedy relief episode.
Yeah.
Its purpose, theoretically, is to introduce us to all the other characters
Right.
in the department, but in practice, it's just a bunch of stale, overused,
Rom-com
cliched anime
gags.
jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everything you've ever seen in an anime rom-com.
Oh no, he keeps getting into vaguely sexual situations with his partner, and the overprotective tsundere keeps walking in on them.
Yeah, it's really lame. And from there, that's when you stopped.
Yeah,
You
I was
you
like,
stopped there.
"That's
We
enough."
weren't. To be fair, we weren't watching this at the same time. I was already done at this point.
Yeah.
Like it had already finished when Gray was watching it, and I had already told him, stuff that had happened. But the reason why I continued after watching that third episode, because that third episode is really that's really the point I should have realized, that this series that started off as being an emotional series that was looking into that could have been really interesting. The story of a guy who didn't want to have what should have been the hardest job in the world having to do this. What it turned from something really interesting like that into a fucking cheesy romance story
Yeah, like
about
like
this
to be
guy
perfectly,
falling in love with his robot partner.
like to be perfectly clear, the rest of the series, from what you've told me, is closer to that third episode than
Yes.
the two preceding episodes.
It is. Like there's a couple of episodes that go back to that, and that's why I stuck it out for the 13 episodes, because after I watched that third episode, I was taken aback by it. I was like, this is terrible.
Yeah, it's like when you told me how terrible it was in comparison to what had come before, I was like, I was kind of like it's probably worse, but I'm having a hard time imagining it being like as terrible as you're saying it is. And then I actually watched it and I was like, yeah, that's like way worse than I was
Yeah.
expecting.
And I could see why you would say that. I've been known to engage in hyperbole, but yeah, it doesn't, like, the reason why I stuck it out, because after that third episode, I was like, okay, maybe this is just like a one-off thing. Like they tried to do some comic relief, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, like, and at that point in the series, it would have made sense
Right.
for there to be something like that,
Exactly.
and then for it to go back to the
To the
emotional stuff
but it
later.
doesn't. It basically, from there, it turns into, like if Spike Jonze had been incompetent when he made Her. That's essentially what it turns into. It's this story about this guy falling in love with his android work partner, and it focuses more on that. Like we see more of just, instead of seeing the interesting thing, which is their job, we see their, it's weird to say this, but the interesting part of the show is not the relationship between those two, it's the job that they have. But you can, ideally, you want both to be interesting, so you would dedicate, equal parts to both, but instead they focused on the romance, and since when you get outside of the job, neither one of them was really particularly interesting outside of the work they did.
I actually thought that Isla was a more interesting character. She was definitely the most
Oh, yeah,
interesting
well, yes,
character in
of
the
course.
series,
Of
because
course.
I thought it was interesting that she's this very lifelike, emotional, like, programmed to have like human-like emotions,
Mhm.
but she doesn't want to have those emotions. She just wants to be a machine
Yes.
because she doesn't want to make memories that she'll just end up losing later when she's retrieved and reprogrammed. So she acts like in a very mechanical way,
Right.
and she just pretends to be like more of a machine than she really is. And I do think that's really interesting, but the problem is that every other single character is so bland.
Yeah, bland and boring, and they just fit,
Especially
like,
the male
tropes.
lead.
Yeah, the main character is woefully uninteresting. He's just a guy.
He's just a kind of nice guy.
Yeah, that's his whole character, and I agree with what you're saying. Like, I think Isla was definitely interesting because I the having emotions and not wanting to have them because of what that would mean when she's eventually turned off. I think that is an interesting thing, and I think another problem is, you realize right away where the series is going.
Yeah.
Especially, you know what the ending is going to be way, way, way before it's going to happen. Which can work. Like, again, Anohana did that, where you get a really good idea of what the ending is going to be before it happens. You know it's going to be an emotional farewell, and when it gets there, like, even though you know that's going to happen, like, it still hits you emotionally because of, the build up to that point, and the characters are all interesting. But in Plastic Memories, you're told about the Giftia lifespan, and they bring up very early on that Isla's almost at the end of hers. So when you
Yeah.
hear that, you know that the ending of the series is gonna be, the main character is gonna have to retrieve his girlfriend robot.
Yeah.
And, if the characters are good and the build up is good, that moment will still have emotional weight to it because those things were good. But unfortunately, Plastic Memories didn't have that.
Yeah. There's only
The characters affected by it weren't interesting enough, and the build up wasn't interesting enough. We just saw them do rom-com things, and we're just constantly told, you see, these two like each other. That's why it's gonna be sad when
yeah.
she goes.
There's only one other character that I thought was even kind of remotely interesting, and that was like the kind of big sister character. I can't even
I don't
remember her
remember
name
her
now.
name either, but the redhead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and she had kind of an interesting character where she was like Isla's former partner,
yeah,
and so they had an interesting relationship where she was uh, kind of protective of Isla, but also wanted her to be happy. And
right,
she also had the only like comic relief parts that I actually thought were funny.
right.
Like there's a part where she takes the main character out for drinks, and he's like, "I can't drink, I'm underage." She's like, it's okay." And then she's like getting drunk, and then it's revealed that she can't even like hold her liquor at all,
No,
and yet she brought him to drink with her.
yeah, yeah. Like, I liked her too. But it was just an unfortunate combination of things. Like if it had stepped away from that interesting premise, but and went to this romance thing, but it had actually been done well, I probably wouldn't have minded as much. But
Or if it had more of a balance of both
right, yeah,
aspects of the
ideally it would have
show.
been a good balance. But even if it had done what it did when it stepped away from that interesting premise to go to a romance, had the romance been done better, I probably wouldn't have minded. But
Right,
since
but the main character is so
the main
uninteresting.
character is so uninteresting, the build was uninteresting, and when you have all this boring, bland stuff happening when it could have done some actual interesting things, it was that much more disappointing for me.
It definitely feels like a show that if it had been in development, like pre-development longer, and they had had time to hash everything out and develop
Mm-hmm.
things more, it probably would have been really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, one good thing I'll say about it, from what I saw, the animation's actually really good.
The animation is quite good. Yes, that is true. That is true. But I can say that I can't really recommend it. Yeah, like, if you were interested in the premise that I mentioned, I can't recommend it because it goes away from it. And even if you're interested in romance stories, I can't recommend it there because there's so many that are better. And
Even like this season, like there were a couple this season that were like,
yeah,
because there was Dungeon,
yeah,
and the anime only story in Blood Blockade is basically a love story as well.
yes. So,
And then we'll get to another good love series from this
yep,
season as well in a little
yep.
bit.
So
You have
there's
you have way better
there's
options
way
if you're
there's
into
way better options.
romance.
Yeah, and
Oh, and Nagato Yuki also has romance stuff in it.
right. So there's way better options. What's here just wasn't good enough, and the interesting thing that it had going for it, it doesn't even really utilize it in the best way. So I can't really recommend it. All right, we're getting near the end now. There's only two left, and this next one I'm kind of interested to hear. I'm kind of interested to have a discussion on. I think I've watched. It's currently running. It's Food Wars Shokugeki no Soma. Uh, I have watched the anime uh, up to this point. I've watched all the episodes of the anime that have aired. There's only a couple more left. It'll be over in a couple of weeks. I don't think you haven't watched any of the anime, right?
No.
But you've read all of the manga. I've read everything after I got a Shonen Jump subscription, which
I think was like it was either the tail end of the Stagiaire stuff or the beginning of the next arc after that.
I think it was like right at the end. So when I started, I want to say they were just meeting with like the Council of 10 in the manga. So I'm current on the manga. Like, I read the chapters that come out in the weekly Shonen Jump, but I started in the middle of an arc. I read the first couple of chapters. I didn't like some of the characters in those early chapters, so I decided, not something I'm really too hot on. But then you were talking about it and how good it was.
Yeah.
And I decided that I would just read from where it was at that time, I would stay current with it. But I did watch the anime, and this is a tough one for me.
From what I've heard, there's some weird differences between the anime and the manga.
Right. Now, I haven't read the early stuff in the manga, so I'm not sure what those differences are.
Mainly I'm talking about the fan service and just how much more played up the fan service is in the anime compared to the manga.
This is what I was talking about when I said that JC staff, like when we were talking about Dungeon, how they were kind of known for fan service-y stuff. Man, they really play it up. And I've talked to a few different people about this. I'm not alone on this thought. Who tried to give Food Wars a chance because they thought it looked interesting, and then they watched the episode, and whenever anybody eats food, their clothes fly off.
And that's like in the manga too, but it's not done in such. From what I've heard, it's not done as like in the anime. It's more gratuitous.
It's way more gratuitous. It's like it's way over the top. I mean, and it's unfortunate to say that because the immediate accusations of prude come up, and that's not what it is. It's really off-putting when you're watching something and they just take a bite. They're eating a squid and then they think it's gross, and then it just cuts to them being fucking attacked by a squid monster.
Yeah,
and they just go, yeah, and it's like, come on.
And that's in the manga too, but like, I don't know, maybe just because it just doesn't dwell on it as much.
Yeah, I guess the difference is in a manga, you can linger on it as much as you want because you're looking at the page. You can turn the page whenever you want. When you're watching an anime, you are, kind of prisoner to the animators, and you're going to look at it for however long they want you to look at it.
Right.
And it's really, really over the top and constant in the anime, and the reason why I was continuing to watch it was because I liked a couple of the characters. There were two characters specifically I really liked. I liked the main character, which is a huge help. Because like if
Soma's a really good character, actually.
Soma's a really good character. If it had just been a case of where just a couple of side characters were interesting, but the main character wasn't, I probably would have just stopped altogether. I probably just wouldn't have bothered with the anime and just read the manga at current where it is, because the stuff going on in the manga currently is actually really, really good. But I would have stopped the anime had that just been the case. But I've stuck it out to this point, and it's just still constant. I'm watching each episode, and I'm just like I tend to watch stuff in pretty close proximity. The new week stuff, I tend to watch it in pretty close proximity, and I get the least excited to watch the newest episode of Food Wars, just because it's like,
Like with the fan service in the manga, it gets toned down like significantly after those first initial few chapters. Yeah. Is it like still going on in the anime?
Oh yeah. Whenever anybody eats food, dude.
Like,
because you got to keep in mind, everybody's food in this series is fucking amazing.
Yeah, well, in the manga, like, even like it's not every time they eat amazing food. It's just one of the really like important pieces.
Nope. Everybody's food is delicious and worthy of clothing removal.
I guess we'd ever explain the premise of the series. I
Oh,
think it's pretty
I think
obvious
it's
from
pretty
what we've been
obvious.
saying.
People cook food, other people eat that food, and when they eat it, their clothes fly off.
But it's like it's not like literal. It's like a metaphor of how good the food is that it
Yes.
makes you feel
Yes.
like your clothes are flying off. I guess.
Oh, yes.
But
The emotion of having your clothes fly off.
and Soma is the main character. He's this kid that goes to this prestigious academy, and they don't let him in at first, but he gets in eventually.
Well, let's talk about that. Because that was.
Because I know this is a sticking point for
Yeah,
you.
this is a huge sticking point for me. Um, so one of the things they bring up is that Soma is like an amazing chef. He's really really good, and he cooks all this amazing food. But he's from like he and his father run this like family diner. And when he goes to this really prestigious school, he's kind of looked down on by the others because he runs a diner. Like everybody else is like, oh, we're like we have these like amazingly successful like real restaurants, like we cook real food, not diner
Yeah,
food like you do.
like fine dining and like
Yes.
overseas stuff
Yes.
and all this crazy stuff.
That's how all of these people are. And the reason why I like Selma as a character is because he just kind of ignores all these people. Because
He does not give.
he doesn't give a single fuck, and I love that about him. He is the fucking honey badger of his own series, and I love it. I love that about him. Because all these people are saying this fucking mean shit about him, and he's just like oblivious to it, and he's trying to be friendly with everybody, but in that way of like he's not going out of his way like, I know you hate me, but let's be friends. It's like
he's just oblivious to like the way that they feel about him, that he
Yeah.
just assumes that they want to be his friend.
yeah, he's just not picking up on social cues. Like there's a character who's introduced as who I actually really like. His name is Takumi Aldini, who he wants to be Soma's rival. Like he's really putting himself out there to be Soma's rival, but Soma's not picking up on that. So he's just like, oh hey, how you doing? And like this other kid's like, no, I'm your rival. This is how it is.
It's kind of funny to
Yeah.
compare this to another series that's running in Weekly Shonen Jump right now, called Black Clover.
Oh god.
It's this newer series, but it's not very good.
It's so
but
shitty.
basically, the main character in that is also looked down upon by everybody else, because a lot of the other major characters are like
Hoity-toity rich
nobility.
people.
They're like members of the noble class, and he's like this like kid from a podunk town.
He's a country
and it-
bumpkin.
and it focuses on magic, and he doesn't have any magic ability whatsoever.
Right.
So he's looked down on. But like Soma doesn't give a crap about what anybody thinks.
Right. But
But-
that's the
but-
other major difference between Soma and the character you're talking about, Asta. The major difference is
Asta.
that Soma has actual skill.
Yeah,
Asta
and
does
another thing,
not.
but the thing that actually ends up making Asta really annoying is that he makes such a big deal about that every time it comes up, and the series makes such a big deal about it every time it comes up, that becomes like his only trait.
Yeah.
And it's,
Right. But back to my sticking point.
Yeah.
So, everybody looks down on Soma for this, but he doesn't give a shit. He comes in and he boldly states like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be the best here. So nice to meet you." And but before that, like he has to take like an entrance exam, and the person running the exam is this girl named Nakiri Arena, and she is they kind of bring up an interesting thing about her is she has this amazing like palate, like she's like an esteemed food taster, in addition to
Yeah.
being a really important member of the school because her grandfather runs it. And she's the one running this test, and she basically says, you just cook me food, and if I like it, you're in. And everybody fucking fails. And so she's about to leave and be like, all right, nobody passed. And then Soma's like, okay, I want to, take a turn. And since she is the worst person in the world, she eats his food, and it's fucking delicious. She loves it. She thinks it's great, but because he's like a country bumpkin, she says that it was disgusting, and she fails him. Says he can't get in, because she's a fucking awful... I hate her. I hate her so much. But yes, Soma gets in anyway, and...
yeah, he ends up going to somebody else.
Yeah, he ends up going to somebody else, and he manages to get in. And, of course, since she is just an awful person in every way, she has no redeeming qualities, she is incensed by this. So she goes out of her way to, like, you know, fuck with this kid. Which, again, the redeeming part is that Soma ignores her, and I wish I could ignore her like he does. But I can't. I hate her so much.
And a lot of places you look, actually, like I don't hate her as much as you do, but I do think that she needs a lot more. She does need a lot more development, and it kind of seems like they're leading towards that in the manga right now.
Right, but what chapter is the manga on? It's like 100. It's past 200, isn't it? Or is it in the 100s? I don't remember.
I don't. If it's not at 200, it might be close.
I think it's close to 200. That's way too long to wait for development for a character that's introduced in the first 5 chapters.
Yeah, and the funny thing about her is that she's usually, like, presented, like, in promotional materials and a lot of things as the female lead, but she's really not.
No,
at
she's
least
really
not.
not. And that's too bad that they present her that way, because, yeah, if you look at the poster on Crunchyroll, which is a really terrible poster, actually, it's just Soma and Erina standing against a white background, and I really wish they would remove her. 1, because she sucks, and 2, because there's a female lead that isn't her.
Yeah, like at this point in the series, the actual female lead is Megumi, who is actually
a great character.
One of my favorite characters. Yeah. I think she's one of yours too.
She is. I like her a lot. And
like she has unlike Erina, like at least up to this point, Megumi actually has like a character arc.
Yes.
Where she starts out very shy and very not confident in her abilities.
Very timid, and she still has those qualities, but that's actually she's had an arc.
Yeah, and she's starting to get more confident. She's starting to discover like her own unique abilities. Like they've established that she's very good at reading customer like needs and customer satisfaction.
Right, but Erina hasn't had anything, and like every time she's shown in, you know, it doesn't matter if it's the manga or the anime, every time she's shown, she's always got a scowl on her face, and she's just miserable. She is a miserable character, and I just can't, like, you know, I don't know, I guess you could say that maybe that's a successful thing on the show's part, like they've made a character that I'm supposed to dislike, and I dislike her, and that means it's doing its job, but I just can't stand her.
I actually, I'm going to stick up for her a little bit, because I do think the interplay between her and Soma is actually really funny, just because their personalities clash in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
Because Soma's like, hey, what's up? How's it going?
Yeah.
I want to try my food, and she's just like, oh, I hate you so much. Get away from me.
Yeah, I can't. I hate her. I've been consistently disappointed that they haven't like introduced like a giant bear to just come and eat her. I can't think of very many characters who I've hated as much as this one. She's
I guess that's
awful.
I guess that's another like success for the series in that like there's this character you really hate, and yet you still stick with the series.
Yep. Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. It's like, but that was like she was so bad and she was so prevalent in those first couple of chapters that I just couldn't do it. I couldn't stand her. But for the anime, I did decide to stick it out, because at least I figured that the animation would be good, and you know, cooking animation especially, you know, if done well, is pretty incredible. So that was another reason why. And I really liked Soma and a lot of those, and Megumi and a lot of the other characters that they brought up, so that was the main reason for me sticking it out. But again, at this point the anime has just gotten a little too It's a little it's toned down in recent episodes because they're doing the fall classic,
Yeah.
and they haven't really had the time.
That's another weird thing about the anime in particular is they're so close to being done with their current order
Yeah,
of episodes,
yeah,
and like they still have the Fall Classic left, which is like
a
this tournament
huge thing.
arc.
Yeah, so there's only like 3 or 4 episodes left, so I'm not sure where they're gonna end it, but yeah,
Like I'm assuming they're just gonna quickly go through the rest of it
which
because
is unfortunate.
I can kind of imagine them being able to do that, just because each individual round doesn't take that long, especially in an anime.
Right. Well, they did dedicate an entire episode to Erina's fucking lady servant, so who knows what they're gonna
Who knows? Yeah.
who knows what they're gonna do. But yeah, my thing with Food Wars as a whole is I've disliked Erina from the start. And it didn't help that like the voice actress they got to play her. I mean, it is not a knock on her or anything. I mean, she plays it well enough. But it's just constantly just a nagging, and I was like, I just couldn't stand it.
We didn't bring this up during Surf of the End, but there's a character in that who's got kind of like
A
a annoying
naggy,
naggy
yeah,
voice
naggy
and an
voice.
annoying naggy character.
Yeah, but Seraph sucks.
Like all the characters in that suck, so
Yeah,
who
so
cares?
who cares? But looking at it fairly, I would say that it would depend on how much fan service you're willing to put up with. If you can put up with it, I think the characters, specifically Soma and Megumi, are good enough to watch, to merit a recommendation, because I think the two of them are great, and he's a shonen hero who has that never give up attitude, but it's not done in a hokey kind of way,
Yeah.
that I really like. And then, like we already talked about Megumi, and I think those two characters alone are enough to grant the series a recommendation. But if you're somebody who can't really, do the most gratuitous fan service, like more than just the average panty shot.
Yeah, there's like clothes flying off and
Yeah,
octopi like molesting people and
yeah.
stuff.
Like
So
if you can put up with that, then there is some stuff to like in Food Wars. There are.
I would definitely recommend the manga if you
Oh
like
yes,
to read manga.
I would actually what I would recommend doing what I did. Just pick it up at the start of the current arc. Just read that, because this current arc has actually been quite good. So.
I'd say read the previous arc
Yeah,
too.
start at the Fall Classic, which is where the anime is. What the anime is currently doing. So.
Yeah, start with the Fall Classic. There's also the Stagiaire stuff in the middle.
Yep. That's
of those two.
that. I think that seems like a fair enough recommendation. Start in the middle. Skip the early stuff, because we basically just told you exactly what happens. It's like this fucking awful person tries to prevent this kid from getting into a school. He gets in anyway. Haha, bitch, I'm in. And
there's also the camp stuff.
oh yeah, that's good for Megumi's character. But I would say like just get to the good stuff and go straight to the Fall Classic.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, that's our thoughts on Soma, and now we get into the last series we're gonna talk about. This one is also still running. It's got, I think, a couple of weeks left of its run. You have watched more of it than I have. I started watching it based off of yours and a couple of friend of mine's recommendations for it. It normally isn't something I would watch. It's My Love Story. Something like this I usually wouldn't watch because of the different genres. Romance tends to interest me the least. I will watch it if it's really good. And I've watched 3 episodes of My Love Story so far, but I intend to watch the whole thing because this is one of them that actually is not just another cliched, two bland people who happen to like slobbering over each other's faces. This one actually has good characters, and it's adorable and hilarious. So
yeah, and a lot of romance anime in particular and manga, they rely so much on the will they won't they.
yes,
Like that's dragged out for the whole thing, and they don't get together till like the very end.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this, they say that they like each other
and they
in
get
the
together
third
and
episode.
like, yeah, they're both.
And then from there on, they're like actually a couple. They're actually dealing with like couple problems.
Mm-hmm.
They're interacting with other characters together, and I think that's one of the big strengths of this is that
Yeah.
it actually focuses on the relationship and not some drawn out will they won't they thing.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
like you said, it's really cute. It's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
There's some really funny episodes in here, especially later on.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this really funny one where he's like Yamato, who is the girl. She says to Takeo, who's the guy, she's like, I'd really like it if we could go to the same school together. And so he's like, oh, I want to go to like the same university as you when we're older. And so he takes this like cram test, like practice test to get into the school
Mm-hmm.
to see if he'd be able to make it. And the grade that he gets at the end of the test is like indeterminate, and he's like, "No, what does that mean? Did I fail?" And then then it's revealed that it was an all-girls school. And then his friend Sunakawa, who's like the third wheel main character,
Yeah.
he's like just laughing because he knew the whole time. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of funny stuff in here. The characters are really likable. Takeo's like this big, hilarious-looking guy who's like really strong and like.
He's like, he's like, they compare him to an ogre a lot. He's like a Shrek.
Or a gorilla.
He's
or like,
anime Shrek.
And like you'd think that like no girls would like him because he's kind of odd looking,
Mm-hmm.
but Yamato actually like really likes him and thinks he's really cool. And one of the things that you learn through the course of the series is that he actually is really cool.
Yeah.
Like he's really helpful. He's always like helping people or even saving people because like a lot of like near disasters seem to happen around him.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I've only seen a couple of episodes, but I've really liked what I've seen so far. Yeah, like I said, I usually tend to stay away from. When I first heard about it, and a lot of people were kind of gushing about it even early on. They were like, "Oh, watch my love story. It's great. It's funny." And I was like, maybe. And then I read the synopsis, and it was about, and it was just, and as like, it didn't seem like at first to me like there was really anything that I would like kind of latch onto, because to me, my favorite romance anime that I've seen is called Love, Chunibyo, and Other Delusions.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with that, and I don't know what this says about me, but the main draw of that series is it kind of does that thing you were talking about. Like there's a will they won't they kind of thing, even though they will.
Yeah.
But the draw of that is because these characters are chunibyos, which is called middle school syndrome. They like pretend that they're having these huge fucking fight scenes with each other. And it's really that's where the series is. That's the hook is those really kind of big flashy fight scenes. Even though this is a romance story.
Yeah, whereas the focus in My Love Story
is actually
very much on the romance.
On the romance, right? And even
but it's explored so well, and it's so funny and cute that it's really engaging.
Yeah, I've liked everything I've seen of My Love Story so far, and. God knows if I get the time, I will definitely watch it. So,
but the thing is, those first 3 episodes are kind of weaker. I almost feel like they're kind of,
which is really saying something.
Awkward. Yeah, because like it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But once they're actually together, like the series opens up a lot, and it becomes very, very like just something special.
Yeah. So, I think it's fair to say that we would both recommend it, even though I haven't seen a lot of it. It definitely does a lot more than the average romance story would do. So even if you're not really into romance stories, I think this one's got good enough characters that it still warrants a recommendation.
Oh, and Takeo's faces that he makes, like his reaction faces, are just the best. Like if you look at like meme sites or picture sites or anything, you've probably seen
a lot of Takeo,
like a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, he's on there quite a bit. But that was the last show that we had to talk about. It's pretty crazy, but that was 11 series that we talked about. To kind of wrap this up, there's just like a couple final questions that I want to throw your way.
Okay.
If you had to pick a favorite and a least favorite from the spring season of shows, what would you pick?
My favorite?
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard.
Yeah, I was going to say the favorite. I think I know what the least favorite is, but
Because those three, Dungeon, Blood Blockade, and My Love Story,
mm-hmm,
are all so good.
mm-hmm.
Um, I might go with Blood Blockade,
Okay,
probably. Just the animation was really good.
yeah,
The characters were really good.
okay. I loved the shit out of Blood Blockade as well. Nothing gives me more joy when I'm at work and the opening theme song comes on my playlist. Which, for those of you who haven't listened to it, listen to the full version. It's Hello World by Bump of Chicken, and it's fucking awesome. I love the shit out of that song, and I'm always excited whenever it comes on my playlist. But
I'll also watch the animation for the ending.
oh yes, and watch
Because the song's really good, but the animation
yeah, the
to it's
animation's
really amazing
also
too.
really great. Oh, that whole show is just great. I loved the shit out of Blood Blockade as well, but I'm gonna say a different answer, and the only reason is because Blood Blockade is not finished.
Yeah,
Um,
I was thinking about that.
I'm gonna go with that, and I'm gonna put my favorite as Dungeon.
Okay.
And the reason why I put there's actually a couple of reasons, not just that Blood Blockade isn't finished. The reason why I'm putting Dungeon over Blood Blockade is I was so pleasantly surprised by it. Like it completely blew me away with what I thought I was gonna get out of it and what I actually got. The characters were all phenomenal. It actually, one of the complaints we had about Blood Blockade was that it didn't really have the time to do as much with this huge amount of characters that it had. Dungeon's amount of characters were scaled back, so everybody got really awesome moments.
That's true.
There was I really liked the big twists that they did. I thought the fight scenes were fantastic. It was incredibly well animated. I loved all the characters, and just that final fight scene. Just Belle is such a great character. I really like everybody in that. I loved Dungeon. I thought it was fantastic. I've recommended it as well to a few different people. In fact, when I was at Kineticon a couple of months ago, we watched like a few episodes. I've introduced it to a couple of my coworkers. I got them watching it, and they all love Dungeon. I love Dungeon a lot, so I'm gonna go with that. So, what's your least favorite? Is there any point in asking?
I would say Seraph at the end, but I didn't watch it.
That's a good point. So, what is your actual least favorite then?
I think I have to say Plastic Memories because it's the one I watched more of.
Okay, that's
like more than Zero.
More than Zero. That, hey, you know what? That is a fair assessment. Part of me wants to say something other than Seraph because Seraph is too obvious. Because, like, if anybody follows me on Twitter or if anybody, knows anything about me, I have not been shy about my hatred of Seraph of the End. I've posted numerous, tweets about how shitty it is. And, every month a new chapter comes out, and every month the chapter sucks, and I waste no time in talking about how terrible it is. So, and looking at everything else here, the only other thing, part of me wants to say Plastic Memories for the fucking bait and switch that it did on me. So I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna say Plastic Memories as well. Because at least with Seraph, I went into Seraph knowing exactly what I was gonna get. I had already read, I had read everything that was in the manga that they showed in Seraph. I knew what I was getting into, and, what I was getting was better artwork for the same garbage I had already read. So there was no surprises, whereas Plastic Memories was a surprise, and the worst kind of surprise, where it took a premise that I was legitimately interested in and replaced it with a boring romance story with bland characters, and the characters that were interesting didn't get to do anything, and, it completely ignored a great premise, so...
Like, you know what? I almost, recommend people watch just that first episode of Plastic Memories.
Yes.
Because that first episode
The first episode is great.
Good.
And it's standalone, so...
So just watch that. Don't watch the rest of it, because the rest of it is significantly worse.
Yeah. Unless you like shitty rom-coms that you've already seen 1,000 times, in which case, please.
But if you like we said earlier, if you like romance, there's
There's
way
way
better
better
options from
options.
this
Yeah.
season.
So unless you got anything else, I think that's a pretty good end point.
What were your? I got
Oh,
something.
okay.
What were your favorite and least favorite openings?
Ooh, that's tough. Um, favorite? Oh man, I want to say Blood Blockade. It's between Blood Blockade and oh, it's really just Blood Blockade or Ninja Slayer.
Yeah, Ninja Slayers is actually really
Yeah,
good.
Ninja Slayers is great. That's another one I recommend. That one's called Back in Black by Boom Boom Satellites. So definitely
Yeah,
give that the full version of that is also quite good. Um, apart, I guess I'll go with Blood Blockade because
yeah.
Ninja Slayers is great and it's in fun English, but Blood Blockades could be enjoyed universally. So
It's also got the superior animation, so
that's also true. As for least favorite,
that's quite a bit harder.
that's a lot harder because the terrible ones I tend to ignore. Uh, Most out of place, Arslan, but one that was actually just not. Yeah, probably. Maybe Plastic Memories again.
Yeah, like Arslan's opening is out of place, but it's not a bad
Yeah,
song.
that's
So
that's why I was saying like, I don't think really any of them had like a terrible opening. So
Plastic Memories was
Plastic Memories
weak
was
though.
pretty weak. So I guess I would go with that.
Dungeon actually did not have that great of an opening, but I did really like the ending
Yeah, I
theme.
did too. But yeah, so you have any other questions? Because I think I'm good.
I think I'm good too.
All right, so then I guess we'll sign off. Our next episode will be Who Knows. Uh,
When are we gonna do the next season?
oh God, we'll probably wait a few weeks, so that way
Yeah.
because you haven't watched like anything. So
No.
we'll see you on the next Wasting Time podcast. Follow us on the social media stuff. We'll see you next time.